Hello and welcome. Today, it's always a privilege and always a good time for me to be able to chat with Sister Samantha Crompton. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very, very well here in sunny South Africa.
Don't jump that in. Here I sit in Southampton, completely dark outside, but yeah, thanks to the wonder of technology, we get to talk to each other, and we get to talk to each other for a really, really interesting one today, because. And one of the reasons I got hold of you to chat about this was a colleague of mine was dealing with a breastfeeding lady, and she came in and she said, she was dealing with some negative feelings around breastfeeding. She wasn't quite sure what exactly was going on. And then she'd heard about this DMER. And then my colleague kind of came to me and said, DMER, what? And I'm like in the back of my mind somewhere like, yeah, something about that. But I thought if anyone can speak us through this topic, it's you. So we're going to be talking about DMER, which is dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which very, very misunderstood, I think. And if it's misunderstood by the public, it's definitely misunderstood by professionals, because it's something that's not well researched and and we don't really know a whole bunch about it.
That's exactly it. I mean, I came across it in literature, so it was like theoretical.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, I was seeing a mom in the hospital, and her partner actually came to me and said, can you see my wife? Because he wanted her to breastfeed, but this was their second baby, and she didn't want to. And he just wanted me to just chat to her a little bit. And through sort of chatting to her a little bit, she started sort of describing what I had read in the literature. So that was sort of my first experience. She ended up not breastfeeding because it's not something she wanted to pursue again. But that was my first sort of exposure to it. And then since then, I've probably seen one or two people who we've, actually, I don't know if you want to call it diagnosed, because we don't even know that much about it, to do that, and helped them work through the emotions and what it is around it. So, I mean, as much as we say we want to talk about it, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't know massive amounts about it. And I generally like to refer people to the support groups, because I find the moms dealing with it actually know a lot more than healthcare professionals at this point in time.
And I mean, you sent me past there as well now, just over 4,000 members of a group like that. So this is a good few people that are dealing with this. And I think it's such a heavy space to be in, because already breastfeeding comes with its own baggage. I mean, we know that's why people need to be supported a lot of the time through this kind of thing, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. We know that.
Yeah.
It's not like it's kind of said to be in the magazines that it's always just beautiful and you lie down with your baby and off you go. And there are going to be some negative emotions around it. But I think one or two of the things that I've picked up from this is we almost have to separate this out, because postnatal depression is one thing. This is another thing, we think, that's kind of separated from that. And this is really linked up to the act of breastfeeding.
Yeah, so what it is it's actually described as a negative emotion, and it occurs just before the letdown, and it usually lasts like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. So the way I imagine it in my head, I know if there are any Harry Potter fans out there, I imagine what it feels like when the Dementors come. That's sort of how I've imagined it in my brain, where they suck all the happiness out. Okay, and that's how a lot of the moms described it to me. It's almost, so they described it as like an uncomfortable mood, a sadness, a depression, a little bit of restlessness or irritability. And it's literally just when the letdown happens. And they usually describe it as the first letdown, it's worse, and then it does improve with the subsequent letdowns during the breastfeed. But it depends on your level. So they've obviously divided into mild, moderate, and severe DMER, or the dysphoric milk ejection reflex. So it's with the letdown, it's with the milk ejection reflex. So what we know about it is that it's linked to the drop in dopamine. So we all know that dopamine drops in order for the milk to release. So they need to increase oxytocin, and to allow the prolactin to release, there is a drop in dopamine. But this is an excessive drop in dopamine. So this is beyond what's normal. So we all have a drop in dopamine, but this is beyond that. And it's what creates that excessive feeling.
Okay. And again, like we said, not a lot of research on it. We're kind of conjecturing around this, but just putting two and two together here, that's a terrible time frame for that to happen in, because that's a connective time. That's the time where, and you want to kind of be looking forward to that time. It has that whole skin to skin. That's where the bonding really needs. I mean, bonding is going to take accelerate through that time. And I'm guessing as well, and I'm just kind of putting my mind forward here. You are going to start not looking forward to that time, because number one, you don't understand why you feel like this when everything else tells you this is when you're supposed to feel so great, and this is when, and you move into that and you literally physically go down in that moment. That's got to be so tough, first of all, just to deal with, and second of all, to try and explain.
And, I think that's why it hasn't been picked up as much as it should be, because I think a lot of the parents, when they feel this, they end up stopping breastfeeding. And so it's never really diagnosed, or it's never really managed or anything like that, because, and it's understandable, because no one wants to feel like that every 2 hours. I think it's, I think it's that. So, but especially when I read on the support groups and the 1 or 2 moms that I have helped, they said just knowing it, putting a name to it, and knowing how to manage it actually helps them continue, because now they're not feeling like they're doing something wrong, or they're a bad mom, or anything like that, for not enjoying it or having this feeling during the breastfeeding. And what's quite important is to separate it, as you said, from postpartum depression. So this is not about nipple sensation. So this isn't about, I don't like the feeling physically on my breasts. It's not that I dislike breastfeeding at all. It's not postpartum depression, and it's not breastfeeding aversion. I know it sounds quite weird, but it's none of those. So it's really is just that feeling for 2 minutes during the letdown that it happens, and apparently goes away quite quickly once that dopamine levels rise. And that's what links us to helping the moms actually manage it.
Yes.
So if they know what other factors can drop their dopamine. So for example, what the moms say to me is, if they start keeping like a diary of days when it's worse than others, and then they can try and track what's making it worse. So a lot of times it's excessive caffeine. So if they've drunk like a lot of coffee or stuff like that, they tend to have a bigger dopamine drop. When they haven't been exercising, when they haven't slept well the night before. So we all know parents don't generally sleep that well anyway. But when they've had a really, really bad night, they find the DMER a little bit worse. So that's telling that there is ways to manage it, but it takes exactly that management. And the only way to manage it is to actually know what you're talking about. So you have to differentiate between, is it a full-blown postpartum depression, or is it just during, is it just that dysphoric feeling with the drop in dopamine as the letdown occurs?
Okay. And now you've got different levels that you were talking about. So you have the mild, moderate, and severe. So I'm guessing it's around that mild that we're going to be able to do things to be able to manage. And when it gets to severe, what are we looking at in terms of those ladies?
So to be honest with you, majority try and seek treatment from healthcare professionals, and they tend to look at a whole lot of different anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants, and it's just literally trying to figure out something that works at the end of the day, because I can't say to you, take this medication, take anything, because we really are flying a little bit in the dark here, unfortunately. So when it is severe, they tend to go see someone and get some form of prescription treatment, and they tend to cycle through a few until they find the one that actually solves the problem. Well, I don't think it'll ever be solved completely anyway, because it's not, it's not treating exactly what's creating the problem. So
you're trying to symptomatically bring it down a little, so it makes it a little easier for them.
Basically almost maybe moving it from severe into like a mild or moderate situation, and then using the lifestyle changes to try and help actually treat it from that point of view as well.
Well, I think, it's so important just to talk about it, because I think the healthcare professionals listening to this, I think number one, have it on your radar as it's something that can be happening, and something that you can, just put out there to go, look, this is an option. And again, own it. If we don't know a lot about it, just own that and say, this is out there. It's in the literature. A colleague of mine has seen one or two of these. These are a couple of things you can look at. But again, that understanding the why it's happening gives you a little bit more how to be able to how to work it through. And then we can give them one or two of those little ways of how do you not move into that with this big drop in dopamine. And then I'm sure there would be, especially for the psychologist people out there, ways to be able to manage that as well. Just simply because I'm thinking of the other robbery of this is that it happens at a quiet time where you're not there with someone to sort of bolster you or to be able to spring things off. And I know with me that, like, if you have one sort of iffy thought that leads to another iffy thought and another iffy thought, and all of a sudden it's two minutes of diving down a rabbit hole, so I'm sure there must be stuff on that side. Obviously that's way above my pay grade, but I'm just kind of conjecturing out here what I would kind of look at if it was that kind of condition. But just knowing that there's something out there, it's not postnatal depression or nothing. There are a couple of shades in here, and there is this DMER thing which seems to be hormonally driven, and it seems to be really linked up with the ejection reflex. It's wonderful to know as well, like you were saying, that first ejection is the really bad one, and see, anecdotally it seems to be able to get easier and easier with each of these. But yeah, as I said, a lot of people sitting in the support group for this kind of thing, so best we know about it. And for any parents watching this is something that is potentially out there. And if what we're talking about here rings a couple of bells with you, maybe there are one or two things that you can do in terms of just managing that dopamine level, but also to reach out and get some help, because if this is going on, you might need a bit of help.
Yeah, and also it's about from a healthcare professional point of view, not jumping straight away to we'll stop breastfeeding, because for a lot of moms that will actually lead to postnatal depression, because that's what this whole sort of mindset is set on this, and they've put their heart and soul into wanting to do this. So I don't always think the solution is stop. Okay, it will solve the problem, but it's not always, it will solve this problem, but it's not always solving the long-term problem. So we also don't want to jump straight into that where the simple thing is, well then just don't. And we can't even ask the moms to maybe then express, because this can occur with expression as well, because you get letdowns while you're expressing as well. So I think it's more about rather knowing what the parent's goal is. And if the mom wants, or the parents want to exclusively breastfeed, then it's about managing it and helping them through it. And it can be done by saying, okay, when is it the worst? And let's maybe think about doing something like going for a run before you breastfeed, so that we can get your dopamine levels up, so that it's not as severe and we can manage it that way. Or, doing whatever, listening to music that uplifts your endorphins and your dopamine levels, or something simple as that. We're never going to solve it, but we can definitely manage it without jumping straight away to stop. Because I think that's sometimes the simplest solution is to say to them, well, you know what, you did well, you tried, it wasn't for you, so move on.
Because you also don't want to jump frying pan to the fire with that. You don't want to go from that into a possible postnatal depression, which we know is very possible. I love that. It's almost like prescribing a dopamine diet. So that if this is going to happen, this is how we start to manage it. I love it. I knew speaking to you would be the answer. Thank you. It always is. Okay, so DMER, it is dysphoric milk ejection reflex. Again, we don't know a lot about it, because it's only really in the last 10 years this has really been picked up and starting to be understood. So there's pieces of literature coming out on it, but not a lot of research on it. But it's important that we know about it. Anything else that you'd like to end off with, Sam? Anything that we haven't touched on with it?
Not for me, just I say if you are thinking you've got it, you can go to DMER.org. A lovely website, discusses a lot of things, and what's nice is they have a lot of links to the support groups. And I think at this stage, that's probably your best go-to, is to head into those support groups, see what the other parents are experiencing, and use their knowledge on how to actually manage this for yourself. And then together with chatting with your healthcare professional, your lactation consultant, and just come up with a plan. To me, if you're empowered and you have a plan, you can pretty much get through anything.
That's the way. That is the way. Thank you very much for chatting to us about DMER. And healthcare providers, if you're out there and you're listening to this, keep it in mind. And moms, if this sounds like you, absolutely, DMER.org. Jump onto those support groups. Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. Pleasure. Have a good day.